Games Workshop hates you. And they're clearly running out of ways to communicate that message as they're resorting to ever more self-destructive means to push this enormous F you right in your face, with now the revelation and the complete spoiling, in more ways than one, of the Terminus Decree. Now, let me set the stage here real quick. The Terminus Decree is, of course, intended to be a mystery. It is intended to be something that fans can gather around and theory craft about. What could it be? This incredibly secretive document that you're not even allowed to know it exists, and only the Grand Master of the Grey Knights can even look at it, never mind reading it. What is in this document that is so unfathomably secretive? Could it be some incredible psychic ritual that only 1,000 Grey Knight psychers could possibly hope to succeed in? Could it be some sort of doomsday weapon? My personal favourite theory is that it is the anti-Astartes formula, some form of core genetic flaw worked into the Adeptus Astartes that, once exploited, will be the end of the Space Marines in total, because the only force that ever brought the Imperium truly to its knees were its own Legiones Astartes. And a repetition of that is always a constant danger within the Imperium, one best avoided a second time. But that is, of course, again, the purpose. It is to give the fans something to talk about, but as GW hates their fans, they have now explained exactly what the Terminus Decree is, and they've made it as dumb as conceivably possible. The Master of Mankind can never be allowed to leave the Golden Throne, either return to life, reborn in another's body, or ascended to some kind of warp entity. And if he does, the Grey Knights must return him to his terrible duty. Indeed, they were created with this possibility in mind. Before we even get into the countless idiotic lore implications of this, let me just point out one little thing here. So, the Grey Knights mount at best numbers of 1,000, 1,200 battle brothers, right? If we assume they have a serious contingent of combat automatons on Titans, maybe some hyper-loyal servants and serfs, etc., maybe a small militia for the defense of their fortress monastery, things like this, we can maybe, if we are being extremely generous, think that the Grey Knights have a total combined force of 10,000 total, the overwhelming majority of which will be combat automatons, servitors, or locally trained militia serfs loyal to the Grey Knights, with 1,000 to 2,000, maybe a couple hundred aspirants being the actual Grey Knights. This force is expected, with no additional instructions, mind you. The Grey Knights would themselves be the weapon, as the Terminus Decree is not a weapon, nor a magic formula, so the Grey Knights will need to gather on Titan, launch their fleet, fight their way through Battlefleet Solar, fight their way past Mars, achieve orbit above Terra, one of the largest concentrations of anti-orbital weaponry in the galaxy, plus the phalanx of the Imperial Fists, frequently found in orbit above Terra. Then they'd need to descend down onto the planet, where they will assault the single most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy, the single largest fortress in the galaxy, the Imperial Palace, defended by dozens of elite Imperial Guard regiments. We're talking Palatine Sentinels, we're talking Lucifer Blacks, we're talking the entirety of the Adeptus Custodes Order. Not to mention Ordo Sinister, a psychic Titan Legion, not to mention the Titans guarding the Eternity Gate, not to mention the Sisters of Battle Covenant, not to mention the Sisters of Silence fighting alongside the Custodes. Before we even get into the reasons why this decree makes no sense, we need to contend with the fact that the Grey Knights could not, in everlasting hell, even hope to have enough firepower to get to the surface. Never mind reach the Emperor. And then, a final tip. Once they reach the Emperor, assuming he has ascended, reincarnated, or otherwise, the Grey Knights then need to tell the God Emperor of mankind to sit the fuck back down again. This is nonsense. This is complete and utter insanity. And, okay, the lore of this, right? Why? Why would the Emperor go, listen, if I'm ever reincarnated, kill me and put me back on my throne? Why? Okay, the Astronomicon and the Warp Portal, right? Okay, but if anyone could fix that, it would be a reincarnated God Emperor. Or ascended to a warp entity of some kind, okay. How are you gonna stop it? Are you gonna follow him into the warp portal and drag him back? That makes no sense either. Are we expected to believe that the Grey Knights could shackle the Chaos God of anti-chaos, or of order, more correctly probably in the case of the God Emperor? That makes no sense. If he's reincarnated, they're gonna have to take him on mano a mano. That makes no sense. Not to mention, if he's reincarnated, what happens to his actual body? Wouldn't that still be the psychic fulcrum right there? It's like... This is kind of an anti-mystery. See, a good mystery, which many old settings require some good mysteries, is something where there is a whole host of good options, equally valid theories that you can then have fun theory crafting around. An anti-mystery is where all of the options appear to be equally idiotic and non-functional within the rules of the universe. This is an anti-mystery. It not merely just destroys the point and value of the Terminus Decree as a mystery, it adds in a host of even dumber mysteries to undermine the entire concept of mystery in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. As now we gotta go, okay, why the fuck would the Grey Knights do this? Why would they believe that they could get away with it? I mean, surely, if this is supposed to be one of the fundamental requirements of the Grey Knights, again, that they were created by the Master of Mankind, with the final command, this is his most important command to the Grey Knights, if I ever resurrect, put me back on the throne, he wouldn't assign 1,000 soldiers to do that. This would be something along the lines of, oh, by the way, if this happens, I'm going to send out a secret signal into the galaxy, which will cause every single Space Marine chapter in the galaxy to turn towards Terra, because it would be the only force with even an iota's chance in fucking hell of achieving this objective. The Grey Knights can be a bonus. They can be the leaders of this crusade fleet, maybe, but the idea that they would pull this off? Not to mention, of course, that the Grey Knights wouldn't be at full strength by the time they launched from Titan, as time would be of the essence if the God Emperor has decided to step down from the throne. Not to mention the consequences of him leaving the Golden Throne would be rather immediate as well. The further you go down the rabbit hole of how many ways this just doesn't work, the more upset I and you become. This is anti-lore. This isn't creating, it isn't additive, it is universally destructive, and the only conceivable possible reason why you would ever want to make something like this is if you, the author, genuinely believe that the Emperor is the bad guy in this situation. Hear me out here. The only way you could possibly wish to write a scenario in which the Grey Knights needed to curtail the Emperor and imprison him onto the Golden Throne is if you envisioned the Emperor as the villain of this piece. This could only be explained by somebody who is more of a Arendemsky-Bowden persuasion, the kind of people who genuinely kind of think that Chaos did nothing wrong. The kind of people who think that the Emperor is actually the villain of Warhammer 40k, instead of the undisputed hero that he is. This kind of writing can only exist if you have managed to trap yourself into the mental prism of believing that somehow the Emperor returning would be a negative worthy of sacrificing the entirety of the Grey Knights chapter in a hopeless YOLO rush towards the largest gathering of anti-orbital weaponry in the fucking galaxy. Hi. It is so idiotic. This is the kind of writing that could only possibly be created by somebody outside of 40k, or somebody who has utterly forgotten or rejected 40k. In other words, it is exactly the kind of writing you would expect from modern day Games Workshop. The Games Workshop that have rejected their own logo, for fuck's sake. That is the only company that could write something like this. The anti-lore of Warhammer 40,000, which of course again has been going for quite some time now. Everything from Warhammer Adventures to Belisarius Call is all anti-lore. And I will point out as well, to reinforce my the Emperor is the villain theory for GW, every new piece of lore they've written about the Emperor has been practically custom-made, ordered to specifics to minimalize the Emperor, to reduce him, to make him lesser and less impressive. He didn't invent the Space Marines. That was some random dude. He didn't perfect the formula. That was Belisarius Call. Etc., etc. This can only be the product of somebody who, at long last, for the longest time, the theory was that at some point the God Emperor would get off his throne and launch a new crusade, that this would be the resurgence of the Imperium of Man. Well, that might have been the idea of old Warhammer 40,000, but now that we have unilaterally, for reasons of pure, sheer, undiluted, stubborn idiocy, declared the Emperor to be evil, that's not going to happen anymore, now yet further solidified by this piece of garbage writing. The only valuable takeaway from this is, yet again, Games Workshop hates you. I strongly urge you to treat them with the same sentiment. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.